that started this year, the additional tax on medical equipment. Veterinarians that use equipment that can also be used on humans are going to see it. And today, it made the headlines, although something that would have been swept under the rug, something that the mainstream media has known since about a week after Obamacare was passed. They're just now reporting like this is brand new news. There is a 15-page application for you to find out if you are eligible for the free health care option of Obamacare. For the low information voter out there, that means you got a lot of work to do, and this is going to be more complicated than trying to fill out your taxes, which actually, if your tax forms look like mine, they're really not that hard, but most people still can't fill out the EZ form, mostly because they don't bother to pay close enough attention to fill it out, or a lot of folks have a hard time figuring out what's the difference between box A and box C. Why are there boxes? I don't understand. The low information voter, the people that support the occupier in his loon fringe, are going to be crucified if they make any real attempt to qualify for this, because this was never about providing health care. This was about providing the federal government control over one of the largest aspects of our economy, and the dream of all so-called progressives, the dream of all socialists, the dream of all communists is for the government to have full control of health care, because through health care they can make you jump through any hoop they want. You don't have a choice. If you want the health care, you do what you're told. Look it up. I ain't kidding. This was all over the place today. 15 pages. Now, Obama, while he's on his so-called charm offensive, which is a ridiculous waste of time, by the way, and I think most of us find his charm very offensive, so there's no need to worry too much about that. During his charm offensive, he's out here telling folks that they're working on ways to streamline the process. But I guarantee you, there's a ton of the low information voters out there that had no idea this was coming and probably still won't believe it. In fact, I guarantee you, if any of them's listening to this episode, this broadcast, or if they listen to any of the others that are upcoming soon in regards to what's going on with this particular part of the story, they're going to be all like, well, did Obama know? How could something like this get by him? Hate to break it to you, ladies and gentlemen, but he's not a detail guy. It got by him because he's busy playing golf or playing in the waves in Hawaii when the details are being hashed out. He's not the author or architect of any of the specifics of anything that's went on. When it came to Obamacare, he just said, go get it done. Told the Democrats in the Senate to make it happen. The Senate leadership and the Democratic House leadership at the time got together. And remember, the House and the Senate both were democratically controlled then. And they pushed this monstrosity through. Doesn't matter if he knew. I'd be willing to bet that he did. I'd be willing to bet that was explained to him. It doesn't matter if he knew. What matters is, to him, it doesn't care, because it was never about you. I'll explain that a little bit more on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for staying with us through the break. We are back, and we are talking primarily about the Paul Ryan's budget, the new one that was just released yesterday. But we're currently discussing the topic of what it takes to get on Obamacare. If you're one of these folks that can't get insurance anywhere else and you want to get the free stuff that was promised to you when this was being forced down the throats of the American people, whether you are uninformed enough to buy into the story or whether you were smart enough to know better, because guess what? I'm sorry, most Americans are smart enough to know there's no such thing as a free lunch. And the hardest thing to convince enough people of is the fact that the government doesn't have billions of dollars. The government takes every penny it has from us. And even if you don't pay a penny in income tax, you pay taxes in other ways to different levels of government, and some of that works its way into the federal spending anyway. So you are a taxpayer if you are here regardless. And in case you haven't been paying attention, the hardest hit people of the Obama economy have been the middle class, and then right after that it's been the lower class, economically speaking. The hardest hit people by the unemployment has been the black community. You can't vote for this guy and support this guy whom we don't even know what his real name is. What is your name? Barack? Barry? Harrison? Brunel? What is your name? Personally, I wouldn't care what his name was, except for the fact it seems to be he's hiding something about his past. He has either committed fraud about being an American citizen, or he's committed fraud when he was attending college and he received received financial aid as a foreign student. I think at this point, if that was the case, if it was the latter, that he probably could afford to pay back the school, considering he's made a ton of money since then. But I suppose you do run the risk of having your degrees taken from you. Although he has been stripped of the right to practice law, that's a story that most people don't report, and a lot of people haven't even heard. Both he and Michelle, I apologize, have both had their license to practice law revoked. But here's the thing. Here we go. We're back to the budget now. The budget is a decent first start, but Paul Ryan's previous budgets were, these things were balanced by virtue of cutting spending and not raising taxes, were far better for the economy as a whole. A rising tide raises all boats. It's cliche, but as with so many other cliches, there's a reason why it became cliche, and that's because there's a lot of truth to it. I've already heard people going on and on about how Paul Ryan's budget just is a way of saying, I love rich people and I want rich people to get richer, because they seem to think that the voucher program, aka the premium assistance program, is just a way of putting the federal dollars that would be going straight to the medical field from Medicaid into the hands of insurance providers. Now, if you're going to make real reforms and it's going to involve insurance, then you've got to put restrictions in place. You can look at Obamacare as it was written, and when you tell everybody that they have to buy insurance and you don't put any restrictions on how much the insurance companies can charge, well, suddenly there's no such thing as competition anymore. There is no marketplace. There is just what the government has said. This was about getting you to take the government option. It was a backhanded way of creating a single-payer system, which may sound like a good idea to you on the front, but if you think healthcare is expensive now, wait till the government provides it for you. Because you're going to pay so much more in taxes, you're not even going to be able to stand yourself. These increases in taxes have to be done away with. We've got to work towards balancing a budget, and we've got to balance it through reduction in spending. You want to tell me they can't find enough money to kick out of the budget to make major savings. They just announced today they're giving a hospital that's associated with Harvard University a $1.5 million grant to study why some lesbians tend to be overweight. The headline was a bit cruder than that, and needless to say that there were some not so appropriate jokes that were put out there in regards to it, like how do you get fat given what lesbians eat and blah, blah, blah. I repeat it only as a matter of spreading the news. The point being, if you can give, and I'll grant you, $1.5 million is a drop in the bucket compared to the current spending. But if you take enough drops and put it in a bucket, how many of y'all have had a serious leak in your roof? If you have a serious leak, it's still coming a drop at a time. But you have a really big bucket, and it may be a while before you have to empty that bucket, but eventually that bucket starts to get full. If you can stop enough of those drops from getting into the bucket, suddenly you start seeing daylight. If you're going to be giving away money to research why some lesbians tend to be overweight, what else are you wasting money on? Well, there's actually a list of biggest government waste that comes out every year, and usually it's a very entertaining read. I believe we discussed some of the topics in a previous broadcast from last year's. Studying the effects of marijuana on mice, studying the effects of cocaine on shrimp, studying the effects of putting shrimp on a treadmill. These are million-dollar projects. Now, while it's, of course, very fortunate for whatever researcher manages to get that grant, it is extremely wasteful spending for the people's money to be spent in such a fashion when we are broke, when we are giving away billions of dollars worth of aid to people that don't like us, like, say, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, when we're snubbing our allies, when we're being laughed at and we owe billions of dollars to China, we've got to have a budget. Nothing is going to be done, though. Nobody's going to take the step to actually step up until we do away with continuing resolutions. As long as there's a continuing resolution, I've been harping on this for a while now. I know you're probably getting tired of hearing me say it, but until I hear everybody else in America saying it, I'm going to keep on. Until we do away with the continuing resolutions, until we're willing to actually shut down the government if need be, nothing is going to get accomplished. And until we have a budget, we can't begin to cut the budget. We have not had a budget in over 4 years. We are behind on the deadlines. Obama missed the deadline, the constitutionally required deadline for him to make his budget proposal. And then they passed another law that requires both the House and the Senate to come up with a budget, whether the president makes his or not, blah, blah, blah. Until you pass a budget through both houses and have it signed into law by the president, you haven't done jack. We're not going to get jack done until we end continuing resolutions and begin working on a real budget. And we're only going to get to economic prosperity again when we do what's necessary. Cut spending. Not just cut the growth of spending, but cut spending. It's going to hurt. It's going to be painful. But the longer we wait, the more painful it's going to get. We got to make it happen. We got to do it now. You wanted a tough job. You got it. Now do it. That's tonight's show, everybody. Thanks for listening. Hope to be with you again soon.